Right, Dave Schmidt, Darren Wigfield here with Frederick's Forum. At the end of the show this weekend, we had a caller, Ada, who called in. We had to cut her off there because literally we ran out of time, and she was gracious enough to call back. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity, Ada, to have the conversation we were having on air there. So please go ahead.
Thanks. As I said, I'm born and raised in Frederick, as my grandpa used to say, like the cattle. I grew up on 5 West Off St. Street, which many people refer to as the ghetto, but to me it was home, and I love my neighborhood. I love downtown. And like I was saying, if I'm one of 6 kids, my mom always had several kids in the house because they would take in children. So, but I was just saying, when we go downtown, which should be a fun experience when you cash in your pop bottles and things and go to the 5 and dime, we were always followed if it was just the kids and not with my mom. And we would be dressed like kids who rode their bike down with shorts and things on. So I don't think we should have been drawing attention to ourselves except for the color of our skin. And then, that went on. But I still love my town. Frederick's a great place. Mm-hmm. And it happened to be 1975. We were going to the prom. We went to Cozy's for dinner and had a great time because Cozy's was a hot spot to go to. And when we were coming back, we went to the prom, and we were invited to a breakfast afterwards in Upper College Terrace. Well, it was me and 2 other couples, so altogether it was 6. And we're walking down the street because we had to park pretty far away. This was a very popular family, so they had invited a lot of people. And we happened to get out of our car, and we're walking down the street, and one cop car pulls up at one end and another one, and we're all African American, and they asked, "What are you doing in this neighborhood?"
So the neighborhood was College Terrace. It's an affluent area. It's around Baker Park.
And you would think if you saw girls in gowns and guys in tuxedos, I don't think you usually dress up like that to rob or cause a problem. But we were asked what we were doing in the neighborhood, and of course some of our friends saw what was happening, ran down, got the hostess, and she came down, and she was very kind, to the officers, and she explained, these people were invited to my home. But it's just, these are things that we have in our mind, and when you grow up, and after a while it piles up. But the nice thing about this town, I still love it. My parents are amazing people, so I didn't carry hate in my heart. I know it would be problems because we always knew it. I had 2 brothers, cousins who always lived with us, so we know the boys had some trouble. But then I go to start my family, and my husband and I get married, and we move in Mount Pleasant, and we happen to be the only African-American family. And, we knew some neighbors didn't like us, but the majority of the neighbors were really great people. And the one that amazed me the most, when the window was up, someone said, there are black people moving in this neighborhood? And one little kid, I can still remember, his name is Scott Ritter. He's not with us anymore, but he said, I don't care as long as they're nice people. And I thought, well, that's the thing from the mouths of babes. You always, so I always had hope, and I still don't get bitter. But then I have a large family. I have 4 boys and 1 girl. And all of my kids, as they're growing up, kids have different personalities. I happen to have 2 sons who like the hair, dreadlocks, and I had 2 boys who I called my choir boys. But just to see how they would be treated differently in life, just because one chose to have dreadlocks and dress very artsy. And so when she throws Spug out there and they say this, and thank goodness everybody in our neighborhood, we had great experiences at both of my neighborhood and Mount Pleasant. I live in Spring Ridge. But during the time, again, that we were here in Spring Ridge, my boys totally averaged probably 2 or 3 times they were pulled over in this neighborhood to say, what are you doing in the neighborhood? It was never, that was always the first question. But and you're right. We had to have that talk with our boys, so they knew what to say and things like that. But
you're talking about now, right? We're not talking about the 60s or the 70s. You're talking about
you're not,
experiences now.
No, you're not, and that's the thing. And thank goodness we have a loving household, and we're raised in love. And I'm not gonna buy into the hate, and I'm not gonna throw names because that just perpetuates it even more. But that's what I mean. And then one night, my husband and I are coming from a wedding, and we had stayed pretty late, and we're coming home again. He's in a tuxedo, and I'm in a gown because we were in the wedding.
And this is in Mount Pleasant. And about what year was this?
No. Now that we moved from Mount Pleasant. Now we moved in Spring Ridge. Matter of fact, we're one of the first black families to live in Spring Ridge. In 1992, we moved here. And we were coming back late from a wedding. And we were pulled over in our neighborhood. Well, as soon as the policeman, to me, would have seen we have a gown and a tuxedo on again, what are you doing in this neighborhood? Who at that time of night? And it just, I mean, that's the question we were asked. What are you doing in this neighborhood? Not, I'm just checking to make sure things, what are you doing in this neighborhood?
Completely and utterly inappropriate thing for you to be asked.
Yeah, see, and still, my husband and I are not going to be bitter about that because my kids had a great experience. They've all gone to college and things. But just the difference with my son having dreadlocks for 4 years in college, he could not get summer jobs. So he decided to start his own little business, and he would paint the dorms. But and then going forward again, my youngest son, his best friend moved to Florida. They went to school together at Friends Meeting School, which is a great school. Give him a little, but his best friend had to move away in 6th grade. So they still stayed best friends, and they wanted to travel back and forth to see each other. He's a white young man, great little kid, and my son, at the time, now my second son is growing dreads. And so we go to put him on board the airplane so he can go see his best buddy in Florida. Well, I had to turn around to do something with his baggage, and my son is taken by these two men all of a sudden. And I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And I didn't know who to go to, so I went back to where we got our ticket, and I said, my son has just been taken. What is going on? And they said, they'll come and talk to you soon. But he's held in a room for half an hour because he was very mature for the time. He had a mustache and dreadlocks. 14 years old. Do you know what kind of trauma? And then I still have to put him on the plane because, of course, he wants to see his best friend. But now I'm a little traumatized. What's going to happen to him at the other end? And it's just things like that. And so when people say, oh, dress in a suit, well, my son, I feel he has the right not to dress in a suit. If he wants to be a skateboarder, he can be a skateboarder. And why are you looking at, and it's funny because we called the one choir boy and one my little Jamaican boy. So why do people look, when you judge that way, you don't understand that these two boys were raised in the same family, but you assume choir boy is going to be nice and, give the shirt off your back when actually it may be dreadlocks who's going to give you the shirt off his back.
So, Ada, something that I was really uncomfortable with while we were listening to the show, and that seems to be the solution that everyone says, well, then dress appropriately, act respectfully, behave differently. But you know what? That's conformity. And I don't want to say that we as a society have to make everybody conform to our own norms about behavior and social or language or anything like that in order for us to have equal justice under the law.
That you're treated the same by law enforcement, treated the same by society. Because, and again, this is right at the end of the show there, I said, if you look white, we'll treat you well. That should not be the way our society is.
And the other thing, like the lady said, that was inappropriate time. How does she think we feel? How do you think I felt as a mom standing there going through that? Mm-hmm. And she sits there and says, oh, them disrupting with the peace. That was interruptive. But see, if you're not interrupted, my life is interrupted this way, and nobody knows my story. And is that fair to me that this can happen to my kid? I know my neighbors. We have been here 22 years, 24 years. I don't know any of my neighbors who can tell the same stories. And thank goodness I have supportive neighbors. So as soon as one of my kids were pulled over, the old telegraph line, I got word that my son was being held at the corner. So thank goodness we do have a really wonderful community. But when she says, it was disruptive, it was the wrong time. Do you know how long this has been the wrong time? I've seen it. Now I'm seeing my kids see it. My mother happens to be alive, who's 80 years old. She's seen this, and she says that wasn't the appropriate time. When is the appropriate time? We have been waiting for a long time for us not to be seen like this. And that thug word, I just don't like the way, because to me it's replacing other bad words. I don't want to use that word. I don't I don't speak that way because to me, too many words in the dictionary to describe a human being, and we just go to the lowest level. When Pattee just kept saying "thug," and he's going to just talk like that. Anybody can act and talk like that, but that doesn't make it right.
Yeah.
For you to judge that person.
So Pattee's intention in using that word, I'm sure, was to make it so that it was something that could apply to people of any race, but still describe a personality and a persona and a manner of conduct.
Yeah, but I think it doesn't, and that's the problem, is that it is generally applied racially.
Yes. I feel it is. I feel the word is like the black on black crime. When was the last time I said white on white crime?
Yeah.
Right?
So
the last couple of things that have happened in Frederick incidents, when do they say white on white crime? I don't hear that term as much.
So being an ignorant white guy that grew up in an affluent area, let me ask, is there an appropriate term that would be less offensive that, is urban?
The
Urban's not the right word, obviously.
Term would be another human being took another human being's life. Yeah. I mean, when we start separating it to make it a color, I mean, that is what, my mom taught me to do. My kids happen to be married to two people of other races. So, for you to say that, it's offensive to my whole family.
When somebody wants to describe and say, people who dress a certain way and carry themselves a certain way, and they're currently using the term thug to describe that, you're saying they shouldn't even be trying to describe that because they shouldn't be trying to isolate a group of people that fit that description from the rest of us who don't fit that description, because we should all be treated the same way. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah,
yes.
Describing them.
When you were, it was very radical to wear jeans and a T-shirt. Clark Gable made the to show an undershirt. Before then, that was scandalous. But I don't remember them hearing saying, Clark Gable, that thug, he put on a V-neck T-shirt and just wore it out with his jeans. How scandalous. You didn't hear that. He's one of the biggest thugs, and he walked around in this white T-shirt. And so when you say this about the kids who wear these things, you want to categorize them in such a way. I don't remember anybody associating Clark Gable with being a thug. Do you?
Yeah. For
wearing jeans and a T-shirt, which was scandalous back then, to not wear a shirt over top of his shirt. He made it pretty famous. To the day, Calvin Klein made it even bigger. It's just like, they're children expressing themselves. My kids didn't walk around with their pants falling down because it wasn't acceptable, but he may have had baggy pants on, but one of the rules were you're not going to show your undergarments. And so I just take every human being, because you don't know who's behind that human being, and we come in all walks of life, and you don't know the hand that's going to be there to help you, and to assume that person is a thug, and to even use that word, I really do try to avoid describing, especially when it comes to young kids. They're just trying to discover the world for themselves and express themselves, and they don't want to conform to us, our music. I find myself now telling my kids, ooh, that music's terrible, so I can imagine rock and roll, but it doesn't make a person that word, and I don't even want to use it because I've already used it too many times, and I just wish we could start looking at each other as a human being. And I'm sorry that lady felt uncomfortable about the protest, but I think it was very timely, and I know what you and Pattee said about silence, because being at a Quaker school, we have moments of silence all the time. So we transition that way, and silence is a beautiful thing. But sometimes it's a time not to be silent when so many people haven't been heard, and people are silent in the way that their life ends. It's a tragedy on all of the things that happened this past week, because I said to my husband, I feel like we're getting ready to live this long, hot summer, and I just hope people can choose peace and love, and that's the way I raise my kids, and I hope other people do that. And you assuming because I don't wear a suit. I think the gentleman who Facebook, very seldom I think I've ever seen him in a suit, and he's very generous. He uses kind words, and he's brought something to us, a way of communicating with everyone. And I'm sure he's thought outside of the box, and maybe he didn't follow the path most chosen for him, for children that age. So I hope we don't want to squash all the children's creativity that way.
Wonderful.
By because they don't look like us and they don't act like us and they don't talk like us. I mean, I read some books. I read many different books, and when they're speaking in their language, it's words that I don't understand. Sometimes I have to look it up, and I know it's a lot of slang going on out there. But to penalize the kids and assume they're a thug because they speak a certain way or they walk a certain way, I think we got to stop using that word and stop using black on black crime and all human beings. I mean, we got to share this planet together and look at each other, because usually once I meet you, you become a part of my family. At school, we have class family. You're my brother. I'm your sister. And when we start looking at each other that way and not a black crime, a police crime, murder, separating them all these human beings have lost their lives, and we're sitting over here throwing these more hate words around, which we got to stop.
Yeah. Ada, thank you so much for sharing your story, for spending an entire 15 minutes with us.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to rattle.
No problem.
We keep you on the porch listening. So
thank you so much. I appreciate it, because this is part of that conversation. We have to be willing to sit and listen. So thank you so much. We'll post this up on Facebook.
And thank you for listening to me.
Absolutely. Thanks.
You have a great day.
Too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We're listening to Dave Schmidt, Darren Wigfield here, Frederick's Forum. Every Saturday, 11 to 1, conversation with Ada, calling into the show. Didn't have enough time, so we wanted to give her that time. Really appreciate it. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you every Saturday, 11 to 1.
Thanks a lot.